Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Saturday edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. Two amazing people on the show this morning. Robin Wheeler, who is behind the process called Behind the Retail Vision. He's also a global speaker and a coach to boot, but we're not going to talk coaching with him. We're going to be talking about his retail vision. He'll be joining us later on in the show. But first up, it is that time of year when we're all scurrying around. We want to get our houses in order. We want to be okay. We want to embrace the new year in the right frame of mind. And then some of us believe we need to either go in for counseling or coaching, and that's going to fix us. And that's going to give us a head start as far as our interviews, our ideal job, our relationships, whatever it might be. Or maybe we're just going to be ending up in the same old job, but we want a new perspective. So lo and behold, we think coaching. But having said that, I've also had the opportunity of interviewing very many coaches on the show. And I'm wondering, why is it that possibly every second person that you now meet these days have undergone a coaching course or are undergoing coaching because they want to present a better version of themselves. In studio with me, I have super coach Khalid Jassat. He's on my show now, I think for the second or the third time, and he's going to give us insight into coaching and his journey through coaching as well. And I have no doubt in my mind, it's going to give you a different perspective on coaching as a whole. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam, Julie. Thank you. I'm exceptionally privileged to be here today.
The privilege is mine, believe you me, to have you in studio with me. You've heard my opening statement. I have had the opportunity of interviewing very many coaches. What does worry me about certain people that I've engaged with is when I put the question to them, who coach you, who was your coach, who was your super coach, or where did you learn your craft from? Certain people have responded and said, oh, I've just done it. I've, taken the initiative. I've gone online and I've done a coaching course. And I'm just wondering how prepared and how ready are they to engage with other people on this whole issue of coaching?
Well, I think that's an extremely amazing observation because coaching today is the new buzzword. And if you look at social media and if you look at any kind of marketing and media, it is inundated with coaching academies and coaching institutions and coaches per se. And a lot of them, and with all due respect, we all endeavor to do the best with our lives. And we all look for certain channels to grow and to heal. I think the big challenge comes in is that there is a difference between being coached and coaching. And there is a fundamental difference between the two. Often many people who come through my journey and coach with me on one-on-one, when they heal or when they elevate or when they awaken, their impulse is to go out there and share this. But they might not have the skills and the distinctions yet to go through this. So you might think that maybe a quick online course, a 2-day, 3-day online course is going to just reactivate those skills, the memory of how we got to where we are. But it's much more than that. And for me, the most important thing in any coaching intervention is the human connection. It's the energy that we bring forth to that environment, to that engagement. And I'm, for one, really not privy to online coaching. It could help in therapy and counseling and advisory. But if you really want to do the coaching, and coaching, when I speak about coaching, I think, again, it's very, very obscured, the whole concept of coaching. The one big concept, as coaches believe they need to do, is the impulse and instinct to, I have to fix someone. And that's a daunting kind of perception to embrace or responsibility to embrace.
But Khalid, I think a lot of people would engage with a coach. They have a lot of problems. They have issues that they can't seem to get around. They just can't seem to navigate through all of their stuff. And rather than going to a counselor, they'd come to a coach and they'd expect you to fix them.
Yes, but I think you as a coach, if you go in with that kind of perception that I need to fix people, it's daunting on you because, how fixed are you personally? Have you got everything together? And for me to even attempt fixing,
is it your job as a coach to fix people?
Absolutely
what is
not.
coaching?
Okay, so people are not even broken, Julie. People don't need fixing. What people need to do is, our job is to optimize people, is to give them their memory back, is to make them experience that feeling of becoming alive and realizing that they have the internal engineering, they have the internal coordinates, they have an inner compass, an inner guide that can lead them to wherever they need to go. We were born with some sort of innate gyroscope that is kind of self-leveling. And I think what happens is that when people are broken, when people are victims, when people have big challenges in their lives, they battle to submit to that. And it is that resistance of submission that people feel deprived, that people feel victimized, that people feel as failures. But when we look back and connect dots, and as a coach, it's just for us to help you get your memory back, for us to kind of be a sounding board. And we cultivate a listening presence. And I've realized that most people who are complaining and they are just, going off on a tangent about their lives and their decisions, they don't want a solution. They don't want to be fixed.
They just want to be heard.
They want to be heard.
So, Khalid, let's look at, I talked about people going for a 2-3 day online course, and when they're done, they view themselves as qualified coaches. A lot of people do that because there's issues in their lives and they want to make sense of what's going wrong, and they don't want to engage with a coach like yourself, or they don't want to engage with a counselor, and they believe that if they do an online course, it's going to help them possibly see things clearer as far as their issues are concerned.
I think as a coach, one of the mottos we have is we don't do therapy, we do clarity. And if you can pick up that clarity from an online course, that's one issue that you have as an individual picked up clarity. But that does not necessarily mean you can take this clarity and you can transmit it into clients that you might be serving going forward. And there are skills and distinctions and methodologies that allow you to channel and transmit all this clarity that you might have internally before you can actually offer it over to a client. And for me, that's the human intervention.
Can it work? Let's assume I've got issues in my life and I just want clarity. And I go on to, and I don't want to engage with you, I don't want to engage with a counselor, I want to do this on my own. Can I do an online course and perhaps hope that that's going to give me clarity? You might
be able to use an online course to get a Band-Aid and kind of sweep the problem under the mat, but you're not going to transform from the problem. And guess what? That which you do not repair, you will repeat in your life. Okay. This is a given law of attraction, that the universe doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you need. And you are a work in progress, and you are perpetually being compelled to go towards healing yourself, elevating yourself. I tell people that your past is far from dead. It is playing and displaying in your current life every day. I've also observed that people are not their behaviors. People's behaviors is an expression of their problem, not really their problem. And I also observe as a coach that your daily behaviors reflect your deepest beliefs.
Let me ask you this question regarding, we have a lot of angry people all around South Africa and the world, and for whatever reason. And recently I've been told that an angry person is a person that's in a lot of pain, and the only way they can possibly be heard or give vent to the pain is by being angry. Can coaching address that issue?
Well, I think the first premise when I approach, or I'm approached by a person who has anger issues, is I kind of get them revved up with the anger, and then I say to them, what's beneath that anger? And they'll say, anger. And I go, but what's beneath that anger? And they'll go, more anger. And I go, what's beneath that anger? And they'll go, more anger. And eventually I say, and what's beneath all of this anger? And they'll go, fear. And fear is the driving force of all other negative emotions. Fear, and all fear, hear this, is the fear of rejection. There is no other fear that's active in our lives than the fear of rejection, the fear of not being validated, the fear of not fitting in. Coaches become coaches because they fear rejection. So when we understand that the root cause is not anger, anger is the effect. Fear and the fear of rejection is the root cause. And then as a coach, I would rather go in and delve into where they're coming with this insecurity of fear.
Okay, you did say that you're not there to fix anybody because people are not broken.
Absolutely,
But
you're there to direct them.
Can you address that issue? Can you address the issue of anger as a coach?
Well, as I said, I would tap deeper into it. As a coach, I'm not going to start fixing the surface issue, because surface issues are the outcomes of deeper issues. They're the effects, not the root cause. So what we tend to do is I will guide the client by asking the right questions, by probing the client to get really deep into root cause. And it's quite amazing that when people get to the root cause, there's a whole new expression, there's a whole new energy, and then there's this ponder, there's this thought, there's this moment of silence, and they'll then admit to you. Because, you know, it's amazing how often we hear in coaching, a client say to us, to be honest with you. You know, and to be honest with you, yes, there is fear. That means they've been masking that. And it's taken the form of anger. It's taken the form of aggression, form of abuse, form of violence, subjecting themselves to all kind of external...
We're going to ask how to address all of that right after our break. I'm talking to Khalid Jassad, the super coach, about coaching, what coaching actually is, can it work for you, and what do you hope to achieve out of coaching sessions. Khalid Jassad, the super coach, is my guest, and I don't use the word super lightly. He truly is a super coach. He travels all around the world. He's just been back from Dubai doing some coaching in that part of the world. So I'm truly happy to have him in studio with us, because he's the caliber of people that truly gets you motivated and gets you going as far as all of these issues are concerned. So congrats that you're doing coaching all around the world. We're very pleased with all of your achievements.
I'm grateful, thank you.
The issue around anger that we spoke about just before the ad break, can you reach a level with your client where they're able to handle and overcome the anger issues and possibly direct their fears differently so they don't have these angry outbursts?
Well, absolutely. The whole idea of healing is this self-healing that takes place when one has awakened and has become aware of what is driving the certain kind of behavior. And the first premise, again, we use is that if you don't believe, as a client, you are part of the problem, you're never going to be part of the solution. So it is about accountability. It's about putting an expiry date to blaming parents and blaming our school system, our madrasa system, or blaming the bully in school. Because yes, it affected you to a level, but you've now got to take accountability, because you can now be a victim for the rest of your life, or you can now become a master of your destiny. And I think what we start doing is we start allowing clients to vent. We allow clients to express. And as I mentioned, as you start expressing and getting deeper and even deeper and even deeper, ultimately, the solution is harnessed right there within the problem.
You're very big on energy sources, positive energy, putting out positivity into your own world, because that's going to give you back what you're putting out. You're still big on that?
Absolutely.
The power of positive thinking, affirmations, etc.?
Well, look, we all are energy beings. We cannot create, nor can we destroy energy. Energy just changes form. Energy can be transformed. Einstein said this in E = mc². But what he also mentioned with that formula was that higher more frequent energies will drown out more shallow and lower energies. And we are perpetually broadcasting an electromagnetic signature. This signature is filled with the frequency. This frequency that we vibrate to the quantum field, or to the universe, or to the world at large, is kind of embedded with commands, encoded with commands. And the universe, or whatever this law of attraction is, takes this frequency and doesn't decide what it's going to do with you. It decodes the information that you've transmitted and sends it back to you in tenfold. So if you're broadcasting a negative energy or fear energy or an anger energy, the universe is going to give you 10x on creating opportunities for you to be more angry. So when we give off something we want, there is a desire and there is also a lack. And the frequency we give off, if it's focused on the lack, you're actually going to receive more of the lack. If you focus on the desire, you're going to get more of the desire.
And is this part of the coaching session? Would you impart this knowledge to your client?
I would empower, enable, educate, inform my client. And initially, there's a lot of resistance to it. I don't want to listen to all your electromagnetic signature hogwash. Fix me, man. And I'm like, I can't, but you can.
But apart from that, Khalid, we are big movie stars in our own movies, the movies in our head. We like being caught up in victim mentality and drama mode and play out all of these negative movies in our heads. And whoever it is that we need to settle scores with gets played in our heads all the time.
Absolutely. So I think, and I use the word think, often when clients tell me, I'm thinking, I look at them and I see their body language and I say to them, no, you're not thinking, you're remembering. And human nature seems to be a little negative at most occasions, in the sense that when we tend to think back, we only think of the negative.
And why is it that we're stuck in the past and in the negative past?
Well, it almost seems a force of nature. It's a learned helplessness that we have learned through our psychosocial environment. Okay, everything is based in the past. And we kind of live in the past. So think about it, right? You wake up in the morning and then you kind of want to embrace the day, but then all these thoughts begin filtering through and flowing through, and all these thoughts of the problems we've had, the issues we need to resolve, the dramas we got. So you wake up in the morning, and it's a new day, it's a new energy, there's a new bandwidth of energy, but you're utilizing this energy on your issues from the past. And this redundant cycle becomes your program. So you're actually living your today in the past, and not just in the past, but in the past of your pain, in the past of your problems, in the past of your unresolved issues. And needless to say that if I'm living with a familiar, painful past, I'm going to create a very obvious outcome and predictable future.
And obviously a very, very painful outcome.
Absolutely.
You're going to be stuck in this very vicious cycle.
And it expands. What you resist will persist.
Absolutely.
And not just persist, it expands, it intensifies. And I think that's where people need to start living with the unfamiliar. They need to take this day. They need to become a master of their own thoughts. They need to understand that they are not their thoughts. They are the space where thoughts are formed, where thoughts are created. And once you recognize that you can become a spectator to your own thoughts, you can become a stalker of your own thoughts, you can choose which thoughts you actually want to give consciousness to and which ones you don't. And it's not about stopping the thoughts, but thoughts only become active when you give them a reality, when you give them a consciousness, when you can actually give them some life force. Okay, how many times in your life did you feel like killing someone? Your own spouse, your own children, right?
Plenty of times.
There we go. And you didn't actually kill them because you did not give those thoughts recognition.
Or life.
Or life or energy.
Okay, let's understand the difference between a life coach and a sports coach. What is it that the sports coach is doing to get peak performance out of the sportsman? Is it anything different to what you're doing?
Not really.
So why don't we embrace that in our lives then?
Absolutely, because what a sportsman does is a sports coach does, continuously reminding the sports person of their ability, of their potential, and obviously nudging them and pushing them to excel. but also giving them the psychic fuel through a transmission of how to achieve that excellence. And that's kind of what we do. You know, we sports coaches for the mind, not just the body, or not just for a certain talent. And the thing is, at some level, we are all just uniquely talented in many aspects of our lives, but we've buried this talent through other people's opinions, through certain things that we call failures, just because we couldn't do it once. I mean, in our Life Coaching Academy, we teach the power of public speaking and effective public speaking, and you can't believe the amount of fear that is riddled around public speaking. Apparently, there's a poll in the US that says that people are more afraid of public speaking than dying.
Oh my word.
And all this would stem from a certain incident in your childhood where you might have fallen on stage, or someone laughed at you, or someone booed you, and this then becomes a reference point of fear, of trying to shy away from. And again, what I do is I'll just question the person, because I tell people in public speaking, for example, if you're afraid of public speaking, then you have a huge ego. And I go, no, that's not an ego. That's a humble kind of expression. And I go, no, because if I'm speaking to you right now, and if I'm authentically me, doesn't matter how many people I speak to. So when people are afraid of public speaking, they feel like they need to put up a persona, an external masquerade that kind of makes them look more powerful or more intelligent than they truly feel they are. And they fear that they're going to get caught out. The nuts and bolts are going to get caught out. And when we kind of remove that mask and tell people just to be themselves and to be natural in front of the people, like they would speak to the people close to them, and they could explain that to 10 people and 100 people and 1,000 people, you're still you, right? And you're still authentically who you are. And that takes on a whole new dimension. So it's nothing that we're fixing in people. We're just kind of reframing them. We're kind of reminding them of who they are.
Let's go back to the sport coaches. You saying that the sport coach would tell the sportsman that probably keep reaffirming that you're great, you can do this, you will do it, you've done it in the past, etc., etc. It works for the sportsman on the field. Sometimes not. He has a bad day. Why does it take us that much longer to believe in ourselves, to believe in our abilities, to believe that we are as good as other people may seem, you know, either as good or as bad as other people make us out to be?
We as humans, as people, culturally misunderstand how we function. You know, you spoke about, I do international coaching, and I meet many diverse people and nations and just amazing people all around the world. But what I've learned is that the programming of people is very different. Cultures and religion and, you know, whatever the environment is, countries, languages. But the operating system of every human being is exactly the same. It's almost like an iOS system on your phone, right? And the apps are the programming. And a lot of counseling, a lot of people who coach try to start changing the programming. And I tell coaches it's going to take you a lifetime to make a dent. 50 years, 60 years of cultural programming, you ain't going to fix it in 4 sessions or 10 sessions. But when you go into the person's operating system and you make them aware to activate the operating system, the system that is at the fundamental base, nested deep within, that allows all the programming to actually happen, you can then choose what programming you want and what programming you don't want. I gave a speech the other day at an organization, and I spoke about, if you take back a few hundred years, we had the Flat Earth Society model, where people believe that the earth was flat, and if I got too close to the edge, I'd fall off. And this actually contained humans. It contained human spirit. It contained human exploration, because the fear of falling off. And then there was a single, simple, unprovable idea and ideal that came to a fore and said, actually, I think we're wrong. We got this one wrong. The earth is not flat. The earth is round. And because the earth is round and there's a gravitational constant, you can't actually fall off. Can you just reflect on what, and on a massive scale, how the world evolved? We started exploring. We started communicating with different countries and cultures. We started exchanging languages. We started exchanging products and trading. And today we have an amazing world because of a single idea that was flipped. Now, over the last 20 years, there is an even bigger idea that has been flipped. And that is the idea of what we refer to as neuroplasticity. That the human brain and the human mind is soft-wired, not hardwired. So those old sayings like, you can't teach your old dog new tricks and old habits die hard, actually don't mean anything anymore.
Absolutely.
So there's no more neurorigidity, there's neuroplasticity. And for me, this is even more globally impactful. It's more magnified than understanding the world is round.
Because the possibilities of change are so huge. You can go and make a new reality for yourself. Let's go for an ad break.
Good.
I'm talking to Khalid Jasad, a super coach, and we're talking about possibilities, reinventing yourself and embracing the new year and everything it holds. Don't go away. We're still going to continue talking to him. I'm so pleased that we've been allowed a little extra time with Khalid Jasad, the super coach. We're talking coaching, obviously. And let's ask the other all-important question. What's the difference between motivation and coaching, or going to a motivational talk and thinking that that's going to change your worldview or possibly you as a person? What do you think?
That's an awesome question. Motivation for me is a symptom, not a solution. As a coach, we get people to get inspired to do what they do, to ask the questions, to do a certain activity. Think about it, your little child at home. You never need to motivate them to eat ice cream, but you need to inspire them to eat healthy. You never need to motivate them to play PlayStation, but you need to inspire them to do their homework. So what happens for me is that when I'm inspired, then I'm beyond the excuses that I could normally find is when I'm motivated. So being motivated or trying to motivate is not the true essence of who you truly are. And I know there are many gurus that come here and many motivational speakers that come, and people are really amazed and in tune and impressed incredibly with the talk. But the moment they jump in the car and a taxi guy stops in front of them, or they can't find their car, or the parking fee is too high for them and they can't find their credit card, all the motivation is gone. So motivation is very temporary. It lasts when someone is there continuously motivating you. Inspiration is no one needs to be there. It's a pull towards a bigger dream, a bigger picture, a bigger desire. Motivation is a push towards it, and it's always externalized, whereas inspiration is internalized. It comes from a space within. Julie, I wasn't motivated to get here today. Because if I was motivated, I would be asking questions like, what time, what's the latest I can be there, will I get paid for this, I got other clients. I'll fight for excuses. But when we inspire to do something, it's almost that our entire life force supports that vision, that decision, that desire. And it happens effortlessly. It happens congruently. We kind of got the universe supporting this inspiration. And that's the word. Inspire means in spirit. That means you got the support of the divine supporting you because it's coming from an inner core. You have found an intrinsic value to this decision or to this desire. But motivation, on the other hand, it's an absolute short-term base kind of reframing, and it's not enduring.
So then when we look at coaching, now I'm sitting here thinking that if I take a couple of sessions of coaching with you, it's truly going to allow me to become a better version of myself. It's going to allow me to tap within my spirit, myself, and truly be a super version of myself. But how many coaching sessions do I need to attend? Because I'm also thinking, like I have a lot of celebrities, it's a big thing abroad, it's a big thing in the States, where they either have life coaches or therapists, and they can't seem to function without these beings in their lives. And also let's look at the issue around it's almost like getting hooked to you. So I then come to you for coaching sessions, but I feel I can't carry on life without you being at my side. If you're not around, if you don't give me a pep talk or whatever it is that happens in the session, I'm not going to be able to function.
I think where we kind of get confused between the two is a lot of coaches and therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists work on a very reflective kind of basis, and they get you to become self-reflective, but they don't take you out of the self-reflection journey. They keep you there unintentionally. It's probably part of what their professional practices, and in other words, they kind of get you to do the archaeological dig deep into your own life, and whatever they find as artifacts, they get you to bronze them and put them up on the mantelpiece, and every day reflect on them. Now, coaching, or the coaching that I kind of immerse myself into, is not just self-reflective. I take you down the self-reflective journey, but then we take what we find in the journey and we transform it. And when I transform it, it's almost as though whatever I found in my archaeological dig that I've now bronzed and kept as a strategy for my interventions and for my decisions, I get you to go up to the mantelpiece and shatter them and break them.
So you give them the tools.
I give them
you give your clients the tools.
And I wouldn't even say the tools. I would give them the conscious awakening to the inner guide. Because we are all in the midst of mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. I mean, think about a baby that's born. A baby doesn't need anything to be happy. A baby doesn't need anything to be validated. A baby lies there and you give them your bunch of keys and they will spend 5 hours just observing this moment, observing their fingers, observing their body, touching themselves and being totally bemused by it. And then, we grow up and we grow old and we have challenges in our lives.
And the conditioning that goes into us.
Conditioning, and we are now reconditioned and we are induced. And it's not even our own conditioning. It's not even our own issues. Unfortunately, it seems to be a natural kind of system where, as parents, we induce into our kids. It's quite funny. I was speaking at a conference and at some level there were a whole lot of pregnant moms in front. It wasn't at any maternity conference. It was just, not random,
coincidence.
But coincidentally it was there. And the one mom had a little 2-year-old child with her. And I asked the mom, tell me something. And there were a few other, moms to be. I said, who's more awesome, you or this 2-year-old? And she instantly said, my 2-year-old. And I said, who's more fearless? And she said, my 2-year-old. And I said, who's more fun? My 2-year-old. I then looked at her and I looked at the other moms to be and I said, why then would you ever want to become a teacher to your child? Should you not become a student? Because the only thing you're ever going to teach your children, and this is the drama of life, is the things you could have done, didn't do, should have done, shouldn't do. And you're going to project your own dramas onto this child. And then the child just becomes a cut and paste model of you, and the saga continues.
Absolutely,
and I
for
think
generations.
when we get people to become aware of this, when I ask people the question, whose life are you living? Are you living your life? Are you living your mom's life? Are you living your dad's life? Or are you truly living the life you were meant to live?
How do mothers, and I think you've come across this over and over again, very especially since you've shared the story with me, the moms and the moms-to-be. We know that women or mothers love too much. They take a back seat in the family's life. They do anything and everything to make their children, very especially, as comfortable as possible and almost self-sacrifice. What do you say to that? How do you still love without just putting yourself second best, so to speak?
I think it's about awareness between the difference between conditional love and unconditional love. We are practiced in conditional love, and between spouses and in relationships there is conditional love. But when it comes to children and parents and your creator and your spiritual realm, it's unconditional love. Nothing needs to give to love. And I think what I get moms to realize is that what you're doing is you're focusing on the conditional love, that I need to slave, I need to serve, and then they will love me. And I say to them, it's unconditional intrinsic love. Even if you're a real mess up, and you mess up many times, your kids
okay.
gonna love you unconditionally.
You must have a perfect life.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. Trust me. It's
sharing all this amazing wisdom with us. We have about 3 minutes to wrap up, and that was tongue in cheek, by the way.
Absolutely.
Going forward, in terms of coaching and all of the examples we've used thus far, how do coaches then fix themselves with all of the drama playing out in their lives? And I did say to you right at the beginning of the show that a lot of people go on these self-help coaching courses just to try and get their lives, in sync, or just to fix their lives.
The first thing we understand as coaches is that every individual, I am in charge of my creative experience. The second thing we realize as coaches is that 90% of the time we project our world. As you're interviewing me now, you're not actually speaking to me. You're projecting your world onto me, and 10% of the time you're resonating with what I'm saying back to you in your conscious world, in your model of your world. So ultimately, when you realize that the 100% of this conversation is actually taking place intrinsically, and 100% of the conversation you're having with me is yours, and there's 200% taking place here, then you don't actually get emotionally invested in the other people's drama. Even though there might be glimpses, and I tell all the coaches that come through our academy, you will never ever attract a client that doesn't have an issue that you haven't dealt with or that you're not dealing with. And I've engaged over 400 clients over my last 11 years of coaching around the world in diverse countries and diverse cultures. And each and every client had an element, had a component of a challenge in their life that I had dealt with or was dealing with. And I need to keep separate from that. I need to direct the client into finding a solution for themselves within their own drama. And as I mentioned, the solution's always nested deep within the problem anyway. And I've got to keep myself separate from them.
Okay, you've actually answered the question I was going to, my final question to you, but you can just expand a little more on that. How will I know when I engage with a coach? Because it's the beginning of the year that everybody wants to reinvent themselves or present a better version of themselves, whether it's in a relationship, in a workplace, or whatever the case may be. How will I know how many sessions I need? When will I know I'm okay to go it alone? And what happens if I attach myself to my coach and feel I can't do it without him?
There is a sense that when people engage in a journey with me of coaching, number one, let me get this clear, there is no one size fits all. There is no a model, a program, the 10 steps and 20 keys and 5 principles. That's all hogwash. Because every individual has issues which are individually created within their own reality. So yes, there is a sense, especially in the initial stages, that clients start becoming codependent and they almost lean into the coach. And I, as a coach, through my experience, allow this codependency, but I do not abuse it. I do not own it. I do not become entitled, okay? And the moment I feel that they're strong enough and they're resilient enough, I then kind of hand the power back to them. So it's a very nurturing kind of process. It's also a very egotistic process where the power and the money that goes with it and the validation that goes with it, you could start just really becoming egotistic and arrogant about it because you feel like you actually, I'm telling you as a coach, alhamdulillah, clients will hang on to every word you say.
Absolutely.
They will act on your instructions.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you indeed for your insight, for just all the words of wisdom that you shared with us. I could actually continue talking to you for a couple of hours, but time doesn't permit. But Jazakallah so very much, and hopefully we'll talk again.
Absolutely, and thank you to the team and everyone who's watching in.
how do people get in touch with you?
Can I
Please.
give my contact details? All right. So my phone number, I don't have a proper website because I'm not too much onto the online. But if you Google Khalid Jasad, Khalid, a lot of information does come up.
Brilliant. That's it. Khalid Jasad.
Khalid Jasad.
There you go. And unfortunately, that's where we have to leave it. I was absolutely hooked into this discussion. Really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Still to come, Robin Wheeler, another amazing man, to talk about his journey, his books, and the work he's doing in the retail space. Welcome back, and as I promised you at the beginning of the show that I have two amazing guests on my show. The first one was Khalid Jasad, super coach. We now have Robin Wheeler, and he truly is an amazing person. He's written several books. He's here, well, he has a degree in psychology, but that's not the field he practiced in. He's done a whole host of things in his life. He's written books. He's a global speaker. He's a motivational speaker. He's now immersed himself in the retail space. He's trying to change the thinking of people that shop, you know, in retail areas when they go to malls, etc. He's tried to change the thinking of the actual retailers by writing a book and getting them involved in this whole journey, just to reimagine themselves and to rebrand themselves. So quite a journey. Let's hear how and why this journey started for my next guest, Robin Wheeler. Morning, welcome to the program.
Lovely to be here, Julie. Thanks so much.
Lovely to have you here. So before we talk about retail vision, really a far cry, or maybe not, maybe there is a link to the previous books you've written. Talk to us about those books and how you see the link to retail vision, the latest book on, well, I guess it's been launched already.
Yes, just came out.
Okay, brilliant. So talk to us about your previous books. They're amazing, aren't they?
It's a great place to start because, you know, as an entrepreneur, I've been in business 24 years now, and I'm also really an artist and a healer, and there are all different ways that you could describe what I do. You know, it's my spiritual calling, my life's work really that I do.
Why do you call yourself a healer and an artist? I know you as an author, I know you as a global speaker, and now you've brought another dimension to who you are.
Well, I suppose those are the sort of commercial vehicles. So when you're being yourself for a living, which is my brand that resulted from living my life's purpose through my business, which I'm creating all the time, the element of being yourself for a living is that you've got to operate in the market. So you interact with your clients, with your community at an interface, which is always changing. So those things you've said, speaker and author and consultant, those things are the commercial sort of trade that I work in. But higher up would be to say I'm an artist. I'm someone who's creative, inherently creative, and drawn to express my deep inner life in a creative way. So in a way, my business is actually my art, because my whole life is my art. Even meeting you here today and talking and connecting with people, it's and there's a spiritual side behind that, which I suppose you could go one step back and say, on a deeper level, there's a spiritual calling, and to me, healing is in there all the time, because you're basically facing your own stuff and overcoming your self-limited sense of who you are as you grow into your potential, you know. So there's kind of like the spiritual and then the artistic and then the entrepreneurial, and they're all parts of being yourself for a living. So to get back to your question, you're always expanding and you're always simplifying. So the simple description of what I do now is books. They're my own books, which are all about being yourself for a living, which I call them handbooks for the new humanity. There's a new humanity being born through hardship and strife. And my personal books written in my own voice are the Insight series, among others. And then the books that I do collectively are using a process called Fully Booked that I developed, which is an integration. One of my talks, corporate conference talks, is called Integrate to Innovate. So it integrates all of my services into one simple process, but simple but profound. So I take companies through a change process and I guide them on that, and the outcome is that they write a book together.
We're going through major change, not only in South Africa. We're 24 odd years into our democracy, and lots of transformation taking place.
That's
and then
right.
globally as well, when we look at,
So much.
the horizons, it's just mind-blowing,
Totally.
politically and otherwise. How difficult then is it for you as a change agent to talk all of this through with your clients, with your corporate clients, or even for someone like myself, one-on-one, to make sense of the world that we're living in and the change is happening all the time?
Yes.
You either adapt or you're going to die. You're going to wither and die.
So many amazing things in there. Again, you used the term change agent. There's one that I didn't use, but that's very much what describes it. And the thing with change and being an agent of change is that you're constantly pushing things forward. You're constantly taking people out of their comfort zones, perhaps confronting them on things that they're doing that are old and dysfunctional, and trying to get them to take risks in the direction of what is spirited and true and authentic, which is all the values that come through in the books. You're also visionary, so people don't get you yet, so you're constantly dealing with that tension, and it's an ongoing thing to have that conversation. So I was speaking with a colleague of mine recently. We had a coffee. He's also in the business. He's quite a bit older than me. He's in his late 70s. And he said he struggles because business people, captains of industry, are driven to quarterly results and annual financial targets, and the ability to, or the time, or the orientation towards a wiser approach, you have to really know what you're doing to get through to them, So I just stick to what I know. I stick to what's true. I spread the goodness, and that draws people to me.
I know you're very strong on paying it forward, touching lives in a very positive way.
Yes.
But these industry giants that we talk about, they just focused on the bottom line. A lot of people are driven by greed, and we see what's happening around us.
As a result,
South Africa is a brilliant example of the gravy train, of the corruption, etc. How do we start in our own little way, start making the change? And we will get to the book in a little while, but how do we start paying it forward in our little ways to start seeing the change around us?
Well, I think our little ways are the only ways, actually. They are the big ways, because this thing of being a change agent in a sort of positive sense, or maybe someone a revolutionary, all of that focuses on the outside, and you can't change the outside any more than you change the inside. And if you change the inside, that automatically flows into changing the outside. So the place that we need to work is on ourselves, within ourselves, because that changes us, that transformation changes us. And that's the transformation that's really going on for me, is that of the individual, the awakening of the individual. And from that, it extends into everything that you do. So less than sort of struggling with the outside and even worrying too much about it, is just get the good work done inside, and that'll guide you.
Robin, you will agree with me that the newspapers, the TV, the moment you switch on in the morning, it's nothing but doom and gloom. It could be international news or it could be local news, but there's nothing but doom and gloom. How does one stay focused on the positive, stay focused on the self, to be positive, to do good, to change, with all of this happening around you?
No, it's very challenging. I limit my exposure to those sorts of things. I'm discerning in what I pick up on and allow into my headspace. But it's very difficult, even if you just stick to social media, you're just bombarded all the time. It's an absolute sort of overwhelm. And I mean, fear is really a sort of, fear keeps people enslaved. So when you start to see through the inner workings of things and you realize, okay, well, it serves the system to have everyone afraid, so they keep pumping us with so-called, negative experiences. And as real as those might be on some level, the awakening within you guides you, because if you tune in, if you find who you are, that's a gush of authenticity, that's life, that's affirmative. by its very nature. And then living in a mad world, I mean, all the awakened people have done, the trick is to do it in the mad world, is to do it in the marketplace, not in the Himalayas, you know. It's easy to do it on the beach with a sunset, and go do that by all means, keep that in your life. But the real test of an enlightened awareness of a realized person is their ability to do that in the marketplace. So it's a coming full circle. So you actually have to turn that negativity into fuel. You need to, again, like an entrepreneur, take a big picture view and see the world, not how your president tells you, or your boss, or your parents, or your teachers, whoever's a sort of authority figure to you. But for you as an empowered individual, how do you see the world? What's your service that you're bringing to that world, and what's your vision for that?
And time for our first ad break. Robin Wheeler is my guest. We're talking about a whole host of things, the books he's written, and we are going to get to his latest book called Retail Vision and the mad, mad world we're living in. How do we make sense of everything that's going on around us? Don't go away. We'll be back with you in a minute or two. Welcome back. Robin Wheeler is my guest. He's an author, and he's now venturing into the retail space, trying to make sense and trying to give guidance as far as this area is concerned. Let's look at your latest book, Retail Vision. What propelled you into this direction? And you know, I think when we look at businesses all around the world, people are bemoaning the fact that it's been a really bad year financially. People in business, the UK, the US, South Africa, all around the world. One of the big problems seemed to be the Black Friday madness sales as well. I think it was suggested that those Black Friday sales killed the Christmas trade. Even the high streets in the UK have been complaining terribly. It looks like the retail space is dying a slow but sure death. And you've come out with a book called Retail Vision, Transformational Business Lessons from a Magical Mall. What are the lessons you're talking about? Is your book and the lessons that people get from your book going to turn that around?
Yeah, hopefully. I don't know about turn it around, but I certainly sense that it'll get it onto the new track, which is, I think, quite discontinuous from the old. We have to be prepared for real newness coming, and
so
coming
you're talking
fast.
Online shopping, and I'm also wondering where it probably does speak and tie in directly with 4IR.
Yeah, it's all part of that. There's so many factors that are determining the change. If you analyze that out, you know, but if you just even looked at it as a whole or just went intuitively on it, there's the inner change happening in the individual, and there's this massive seismic change happening in the world, in whichever section you look at. So in this instance, retail, there's the advent of and the takeover of online shopping. There's the drop in the market. There's in South Africa, proliferation of malls. So all of these factors combined were part of what made me, what triggered this idea of doing this book. I didn't have the name yet when I started, but my local mall is Bedford Centre, which I live close enough to walk to.
On the East Rand.
Yes, just in Bedford View. And Bedford View is quite a famous suburb. It's got a reputation. But the real essence of Bedford View is that it's a very strong community. There's a sense of a village there. A lot of the people have been there for generations, and although it's also very cosmopolitan and people come and go, there's a very strong community feel. And I've been going to that mall pretty much every day when I'm in town since 1980. And some of the independent tenants have been there from the 70s. So there's a real history there, there's a community there, and there's a business wisdom. So I had this product of mine called Fully Booked. I thought, let me do it at my local mall, help them all, and I ended up becoming an expert on retail because of doing this project. So now, like you so accurately said, I found myself in retail. And this book has written itself with my tool that I developed and my guidance, my facilitation. So it's written by me with 26 tenants and 3 of my colleagues. And it truly is a transformational book.
When did the journey start? With the Bedford View Mall,
Yes.
and all of those tenants?
Well, like I say, I mean, I walk around there and I just greet people like this.
I mean, the journey of the book, the
So
writing
then,
of the book.
Early last year, I had a meeting with someone, a sales speaker who I'd done a tour to Iran with and have been friends with since, to talk about selling fully booked. And he started talking about malls and how it's the service experience that puts people off, and it's the service experience that draws and keeps people there. But very often you have a bad service experience, and malls will renovate their buildings, but they won't renovate their human side. The service, the customer experience is the term for it these days. So, and also what happened with Bedford Centre is it changed ownership from an entrepreneurial owner who was more accessible to a corporate owner who was less accessible and more structured and rigid. So all of those factors put the mall in like retail everywhere in the position of having to reinvent itself. So I've gone in there and found the soul of it, activated people, aligned them with a vision for humanity and for retail, and then facilitated this book now. And it's a handbook for anyone in retail, anybody, landlords, centre managers, anybody in shops, major retailers. It gives you the answers from the people living it.
You talk about proliferation of malls. I think that is not unique to South Africa. It's something that's happening all around the world, because malls are not only places of trade, it's also places of entertainment.
Exactly,
and
community.
People do, yes, absolutely. They use it as a community.
As a ritual,
Yeah.
They eat together there, you know.
Right. So the malls are here to stay. Obviously, for those reasons. What's online shopping then going to do to the other facet of malls, apart from the entertainment value that it offers, the retail value, the retail part?
Well, look, that remains to be seen. I'm pretty confident that if we do things correctly, the right thing will materialize, but I'm not sure that we actually still can use the old model too much as a reference point. We need to be mindful to drop that and just say, what's my essence? What am I here to do? And if it's to enrich people's lives with your presence, whatever you're selling as a commodity is secondary. If it's infused with your spirit and your service and how well you do things and how much you care, and that's what makes the retail, the single retailer, because that is written by the independents, not the corporates. That person who's in control of their own destiny, who actually has all the odds stacked against them, but manages to almost do the impossible, and you're bringing that to people consciously and deliberately, and you've got a product that pays the bills and does the turnover, but actually you're in the business of those values, of living your life's work, connecting with the community of the mall, the people you work with, very, very strong. People have seen each other go through all of life's experiences for decades together. They're a community. And that can go very negative, where they have a negative talk, or it can be something that's progressive and building, you know. And then just being of service to the community in the long term. You know, those are principles of business.
The motivation to get the tenants to write these stories, what are you hoping that people are going to glean from that? I'm not a retailer, and if I read this book, what's it going to teach me? What am I going to walk away with after having read this book? Is it going to change my experience of trawling the malls, for example?
It definitely will. Initially, when you were asking, I was thinking it's a universal message through the vehicle of retail. So it speaks to your soul, your life's purpose, your business, whatever business you're in, and then retail itself, it's retail specific, but there's sort of layers of depth in there, you know, so it'll inspire you, it'll educate you as to your own purpose in life and your own business skills, but it'll also give you a lot of deep insight into retail. It's a very difficult industry, you know, it's hardcore. You're in quite a when you go to the shops for a short while, it's beautiful, but if you're there for 11 hours a day, it's quite a hostile environment. It's bright lights, it's cold surfaces, it's unhappy customers. You know, it's to succeed in retail is really a warrior's quest. And
the worry the worry whether you're going to be meeting your daily deadlines.
Your
or
daily
not.
deadlines, but you've got a 3-year lease that you can't get out of. So you're stuck in there. So the book gives you all sorts of aspects. Anyone thinking of going into retail, or all of these school leavers at the moment, read it, because it'll show you what business is about and how tough it is and how rewarding it is when you get it right, you know.
Let's go for an ad break. When we come back, let's talk about what international brands are doing as far, the damage possibly, or whether it is putting more cash into the retailers' pockets, informal traders in and around the malls, and of course in the community, and also the cheap Chinese goods that's flooding our markets. We also know that there are those bilateral trade agreements between our country and China and all the cheaper markets internationally. But what's it doing to us as consumers? What's it doing to the retailers? All of that and more right after the ad break. Robin Wheeler is my guest, author, entrepreneur, spiritual being, lecturer, global speaker, and now out with his latest book called Retail Vision. I think the last part of the interview is going to truly fascinate you, so don't go away. And into the last segment of the show this morning, Robin Wheeler is talking to us, and we're now focusing on the retail sector. He's written a book called Retail Vision, and he does say that anybody and everybody should be reading this book, even if you are a cottage industry. And I should imagine that too impacts on the whole retail space, does it not?
Very much. In fact, it's that cottage industry thing comes through very strongly. There's one chapter in there of mine called Back to the Village, and I talked about how my grandparents had a relationship with their retailers in their lives, and if you keep that going, or there's a family in there, the Butt family, or I think Butt is actually how you actually pronounce it correctly, but Butt in South Africa, Indian family, bought the business from a Jewish family. It's textiles and sheets and it's fame. Everybody in Bedfordview has got tub and rub towels in their house, as part of and he's been there. When he bought that business, he wasn't allowed to own it. He had to have a sponsor. Yeah,
like a proxy type of situation.
So, and then he was fortunate to have someone that was actually honest and helped him at difficult times, and he built that into a very, very strong business. And I was in his shop the other day, and he was just saying, the age of the corporate retailer is over. The age of the landlord even is over. You've got to get onto your shop floor and look after your customer like you did in the old days, with the vision for the future. But it's back to basics, or as this book says, forward to basics. So he's been there for over 40 years. He has his children have grown into the business and are now running it mainly. Incredibly wise man. So he shares some of his wisdom in there. So each of the chapters is people like that, and that's what's emerged as the way forward. Doesn't mean the corporates have got it wrong. They've got some things wrong, and they've got a place to play. And I think the balance between size and independence is where you can optimize things.
But the reality in the corporate space is that there just are not enough jobs to go around. Corporate is only able to absorb X amount of new employees. They can't take on any more. We're also hearing about the possibility of maybe SAA, even Eskom, and other SOEs that are going to, at some stage, going to be laying off staff because they just can't afford to keep on all the surplus bodies that they've got on board. That too is going to have quite an impact on retail and South Africa right across the board.
Definitely.
Then the issue around, before the ad break, I asked you about the cheap Chinese exports. It's killed our CMT industry in South Africa. Right. The issue of the informal traders, they're totally different to your cottage industries. And your spaza shops, well, they are your informal traders, I guess.
They're actually entrepreneurs, If you look at the old model, you'd say, someone is employed, and you would regard that positively, and then someone who's unemployed you regard as as a negative term, but that was the old model. Employed basically means that you're enslaved. It sounds harsh, but it's actually true. How many people actually want those corporate jobs? You know, if people are economically challenged, you say, yes, we need jobs. But if the unemployment rate's high, that means that informal sector are all being entrepreneurial. They're all being of service to their community.
So you're saying that's a good thing?
It's a good thing.
And just going a step back, you are right about the corporate, because you are right, you are a slave there, because the environment is very harsh, very autocratic most times. And, you know, you're enslaved for 8 or 12 hours of the day, and you're having to put on the smiley face all the time.
Yes, it's not authentic.
Absolutely.
So that's dying out, you know. So the corporates, that's where the corporates need to read this book, because they need to get this happening in their businesses. However it evolves, the corporates need to keep to their strengths and to build this independence, this empowered, entrepreneurial, creative, innovative consciousness into business. Used to keep you unconscious. It now needs to grow on our collective consciousness. That's the change that's happening. So retail is it's an archetypal business. It's like being a teacher. It's always been there. It's like being a hotelier. It goes with being human. It's one of those businesses that will always be there. So it's how you reinvent yourself with your calling, with your creativity, with your community, with your ingenuity, with your service, with your responsiveness to the change in the market, but also your leadership as someone who knows that through what I'm doing in my life, that my ancestors did, I'm bringing new consciousness to it. I'm building the new humanity here. And that's what my books help everyone do.
Have you had any feedback from the people at the mall, the Bedford Mall, that have contributed to the book as well? And have they changed their thinking? And are you seeing the change in the mall and in their business?
It takes time. Transformation is it's a whole reinvention of things. So to give you an example, there's a lady, she actually writes the first chapter. The foreword in there is by the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry for that whole area, Ekurhuleni Erotropolis Chamber of Commerce, Vince Marino. And then I do a preface and explains the whole book. And then the chapter 1 that kicks off is by a lady who, she kicks open the doors in Paris. She went to Paris as a reward for achieving her dream. And she'd been through a difficult divorce, and then she'd reinvented herself as an estate agent. And she sort of owns that space there, because on the one side of the mall is a really lovely apartments. You know, it's a beautiful development there. So she services those. She rents them out. She sells them. She's a brokerage. So she came to me for a coaching session long before the project, and I worked with her. It was actually for her son, but when she came with her son, we realized it was about her and her career, and that followed on to her son. And so then I started the project last year, and I did a coaching session with her. So it followed on from the first one, and I helped her write her chapter. And she wrote her chapter first, so the book is chronological as they came in. And her story now is of achieving her dream, and then whilst the book was being produced, she took an office in the office tower there. So she progressed from working from home. So her story shows it, but that's probably 24-month period. And the book is just kind of launching her onto a whole new level, you know. So everybody in there's got a version of that, and some people might not even have read it yet, you know. Some people get around to things in their own time, you know. So a mix of things, but it's so solid, it's coming through. It's really going to make a big difference.
You talk retail vision, you talk about people reinventing their businesses, etc., but it's really reinventing themselves.
That's right.
The change happens within them, and then you're going to see the change around them. Yes. So it's really about reinventing yourself, starting to do and see things differently, and everything else is going to fall into place.
And embracing hardship as the trigger for that. So you can either get the message and get with the program, or you can get hit harder and harder until you wake up and get the message and get with the program. So get with the program. This is a transformational time where you are in the market, your little shop. There's a tea and coffee emporium, them 16 square meters there. Have a family that's been in retail from the father owned a supermarket, so certainly in South Africa, a recent history with retailers, and to bring something there that's the hardship triggers the real you, the inner transformation. You can trigger it deliberately, but hardship usually, or suffering usually, brings it about. And then with that you go, okay, I know I'm on my path here, and then you turn it into a creative endeavor.
3 minutes to wrap up. Let's talk about 2 more issues, and that is your branded goods.
Right.
Terribly expensive in South Africa, and yet you have those stores in the malls, and the food courts. The food courts seem to be doing great, amazing business.
Yeah.
But of course, most of them are franchisees.
Right.
So a big cut of their business is being taken.
Up, yeah.
What have you uncovered in those 2 spaces?
Well, it does seem, if you walk through malls, that the eating places are the busy ones. I don't know how much of a margin they're making there. It's very competitive, and if their franchise structure's in place, then those things are quite accurately designed as business models. You know basically what you can earn, and if you do really well, so everyone sort of gets their cut, but it's very, very rigid. You've got to be creative. Ultimately you're going to go into your own thing where you empowered, so the franchises are going to have to also evolve with that, because there's nothing to stop the human spirit.
And as a franchisee, if you've decided you're happy with X amount of money every month after they've taken their cut, then that's okay.
Work with it,
But if you want to grow bigger and better, or whatever the case may be, then you have to reinvent, rethink.
Be progressive and visionary, and that franchisor will be open to that contribution if they're progressive people as well. It's not just a top-down thing. That's very old. This is from within up. This is the people leading from within. There was no endorsement, no involvement of centre management. It was purely done on sweat equity, community spirit, genuine contribution. So the book wrote itself, and now that it's out, it's becoming a business. Like when we started out our discussion, it's become a business, but it's actually from much deeper values.
So if anybody wants to open up a retail, become a franchisee, or open up a store in a mall, this is a must-read book, am I right?
Definitely.
It's going to give them insight.
Inspiration, insight, warning, worldliness, courage, and uncertainty. If it's not for you, you'll know, but if it is, you'll also know.
With possibly a minute to wrap up, let me hand over to you to summarize.
No pressure.
And is there another book in the making?
Yes, there are going to be lots of those, and that defines the retail industry. Look, I'd say, to summarize, the world's transforming. We can't carry on the way we were. That's all falling away. We're all moving to a higher place of consciousness, which throws that stuff off. So if you're struggling, don't worry. It's all good. That's part of the process.
But it's frightening.
Terrifying. Terrifying. Every day we're facing it. It's real. We're alive. We're here now, present. Not off in a dream, Wake up to it and then become creative in it. And so being yourself for a living, which is my brand, is the way to do it. In my experience, that's my gesture to the world. And my services extend from that to inspire people. And I've got 3 of my own books coming out shortly. And there'll be lots more fully booked books for people who are ready. I'll do projects more and more, and there'll be more and more books coming out. And I do talks on it all. So it's all just to help people do what we're all doing, and to show that we all can, and that there's a new world, a new humanity being born.
A new world order. How do people get in touch with you, and do you have a web page?
Yes, I'm on all the social media, so Facebook's probably the easiest, just Robin Wheeler 1, or just Google Robin Wheeler, it'll all come up there, you can get in touch.
Robin, absolutely fascinating.
Lovely seeing you.
A bit frightening as well, but fascinating talking to you, just to realize that we're going through a change, and very rapid change, and we need to adapt. Otherwise, we're going to be left on the wayside. So thank you indeed, and look forward to talking to when your new books have been published, obviously. Go well, thank you indeed.
You too, bye.
Robin Wheeler, they're talking to us about The Retail Vision. It's a new book that he's just written, and I think even if you're not in the retail space, read the book. It's going to give you insight into the retail space and also what's happening around you. What is it that makes people tick? How they're running their businesses? What are the challenges? And maybe you will start looking at the world through new eyes and start respecting people more and their efforts. And on that note, then, thank you for being with us. Till the next time, as always, please take care on the roads. And it is Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.